Welcome to Love Story with Lisa, where I share romantic audio stories. Today, I'll tell you a new love story. To save mother, I took a noblewoman's place and married the man sent into exile. I thought my life was over, but I became Empress. Preface. The day the Yu family was sentenced to exile was also the day before the young mistress's grand wedding. The young mistress wanted me to take her place and marry Yu Shao. But I already had someone in my heart and firmly refused. Who could have imagined that after just one night, the man I loved turned his back and sought a new romance? My mother fell critically ill and needed money for medicine urgently. Looking down the long road of exile stretching 1,000 miles, I was lost in thought for a long while. Then quietly spoke, "I will marry." 3 years in the northern lands, and the days only grew better as they passed. In spring I gathered fresh chives and picked tender greens. In summer there was soft, smooth soured milk that melted on the tongue. In autumn we harvested sweet potatoes and drank chrysanthemum wine. In winter we roasted yams and sat beside the warm stove. Except for the nominal husband who was always nowhere to be found, my life was supremely carefree and content. I just had never imagined that one day someone would come knocking at my door, and outside would be a sea of people in black armor, all simultaneously kneeling down and calling out in unison, "We respectfully welcome the Empress Nyang Nyang home." End of preface. When I opened my eyes, my whole body ached. A young man of around 13 or 14, wearing a grave expression, looked at me. His tone was not particularly gentle. "Sister-in-law, mother exchanged her hairpin for medicine. Take it." My thoughts gradually became clear. I did not blame Yu Feng for his lack of tenderness. After all, the family had suffered a great calamity. The noble young lady who should rightfully have been their sister-in-law had been replaced by a lesser cousin from a branch of the Yu family. That was as good as an insult. Not to mention that we had barely left the capital when I fell ill. Lady Yu had to care for 2 children while also tending to me, a sick person who could not even get herself out of bed. It was understandable that Yu Feng harbored resentment. I accepted the bowl of medicine and asked him where we were. "We've just entered Yong Prefecture." Seeing that I had drunk down the medicine, Yu Feng took back the ceramic bowl and turned to leave. I called him back in a hoarse voice, "Wait." I reached inside my robe and took out a gold bracelet, then pressed it into his hand. "Take this and give it to mother, though we still have only half a month left before we arrive. During this time we cannot keep spending the elder's personal money." Yu Feng looked down at the bracelet, his expression softening slightly. "When eldest brother comes back, he will repay sister-in-law." The fever this time had struck with ferocious force. Yet even in such difficult circumstances, the Yu family had not abandoned me, a daughter-in-law forced upon them. Lady Yu, Yu Zhao's mother, had even exchanged her hairpin for medicine, spoon by spoon, fighting to hold on to my life. It was my turn to repay that kindness now. I forced myself up and gently stroked Yu Feng's hair. "We are family. There is no need to say such things." The young man froze for a moment, his earlobes flushed red. He looked flustered and gave me a huff of embarrassment before hurriedly standing up and going outside. The rest spot in the tent had originally also been obtained by exchanging silver with the guards. Now that I was feeling better, it was time to move back outside. Hugging my thin blanket I returned to the tent, only to find Lady Yu inside holding little Yu Zhang and softly rocking her to sleep. Yu Feng sat beside them, quietly braiding rope from hemp grass. Seeing me arrive, Lady Yu smiled. "Yun Su, are you feeling better? Little Yuzheng blinked her eyes obediently and called out, "Sister-in-law." "Much better." I gave a small nod, then suddenly noticed blisters forming at the corners of Lady Yu's lips. I said gently, "You've been worrying about me, Mother." I glanced around. Though the sky had grown dim, one could still see patches of young green shoots scattered across the distant mountainsides. I looked back at the group of guards, who were laughing loudly around a campfire, holding in their hands hard-dry flatbread and stone-hard dried beef. Since leaving the capital nearly 2 months had passed. No matter how iron-hard a constitution one had, one could not keep going on these things alone. Thinking this, I leaned close to Lady Yu and murmured a few words. A flicker of hesitation crossed her eyes, but in the end she nodded in agreement. The next morning I called Yu Feng to come gather with me on the mountain. We were picking Artemisia, the white wormwood. He wrinkled his brow, his face tight. "Is this edible?" But when he met my eyes, his rigid expression softened. He turned away, his voice a little uncertain. "Mother still has money. We don't need to eat these things." I kept my head down and nimbly pulled up a clump of Artemisia, answering, "Don't underestimate it. This wild herb has never been eaten by the nobility back in the capital, but common folk love it. Wash it clean and steam, stir-fry, or make soup with it, all delicious. Besides, for all the hardship of this journey, not only I but even Lady Yu hasn't had green vegetables in a very long time. We need to supplement our nutrition." Perhaps thanks to the credit of yesterday's gold bracelet, this time Yu Feng said nothing further and simply lowered his head to sort through the plants in silence. When the sun had just risen and the guards began cooking their rice, Yu Feng and I had already gathered a large bagful. We brought it to the riverbank and washed it clean, after which I went to find the Guard Commander Chi Su. The very officer who had exchanged the tent with the Yu family during the days of my illness. "Guard Commander Chi, would it be possible for me to borrow the cooking pot for a moment?" Chi Su was not paying much attention, and casually replied, "Once we're done, you can take it. Let me make something very simple, steamed Artemisia cakes. The flour biscuits we brought from the capital have hardened like stones. I soaked them in water to soften them, then kneaded them together with the chopped Artemisia. I had Yu Feng go pick some wild scallions, chopped them fine and mixed them evenly into the vegetable dough mixture, then steamed everything over the fire. In less than a quarter of an hour, a light, fresh fragrance of Artemisia mingled with warm wheat rose and spread in all directions. The scent was not overpowering, but it made people unable to stop themselves from drawing closer. The prisoners nearby lifted their heads one after another, sniffing to find the source of the aroma. I lifted the pot lid, scattered a few grains of salt on top, poked a few small holes through the cakes with a wooden stick to let steam penetrate evenly and make them softer, and just as I raised my head I found 4 or 5 guards had already crowded close. One of them forced an awkward smile and rubbed his hands together. "Yun Su, miss, what kind of dish is this? Could you perhaps share some with us?" Afraid I would refuse. He quickly added, "We can pay. We can pay money." I had already made more than enough. On the road in exile, naturally one must cultivate good relations with the guards. So I smiled and nodded, "No need for that." I borrowed the guard commander's pot, so leaving a portion behind is only right. I portioned some out for the guards, then took the rest in wooden bowls back, just enough for 4 servings. "Mother, Yuzheng, Fengji, come eat." The freshly steamed Artemisia cakes were still hot, tendrils of steam rising in curls. The deep green vegetable wrapped around strands of white biscuit, fragrant and tempting enough to make Yu Zheng's mouth nearly water. Lady Yu looked at me with some worry. Yun Su, we haven't reached Nan'an town yet. We should still be careful with spending. The Yu family had been a marquis household. Lady Yu also came from a distinguished family. Now fallen from fortune, she had no choice but to calculate every expenditure carefully. I reassured her gently, "Don't worry, mother, not a single coin was spent." The guard commanders even rewarded me with silver. Yu Zheng scooped up a big spoonful and popped it in her mouth, her round little eyes going wide, both cheeks puffed out as she mumbled happily, "Delicious. Mother, eat some too, it's wonderful." Yufeng took a bite and stood momentarily stunned, then lifted his head with a complex expression. "These roadside weeds are actually edible?" Lady Yu, seeing the two children eating heartily, finally relaxed and picked up a piece herself. As they ate, I explained, "Artemisia has another name, capillaris. It is a wild herb that grows earliest each year. It can be used both as medicine and as food, helping to clear heat and dispel dampness. Right now our ingredients are limited and we can only steam it with flour cakes. Later, if there's an opportunity, it can also be used in salads, stir-fries, or brewed as tea, all delicious." I continued, "When I was small I didn't live in the capital but followed my parents in a small town on the outskirts. We were an ordinary family. The neighbor next door had a skilled cook. I was both greedy and curious and picked up quite a few techniques from that old chef. He once lamented that it was a pity I was not born a man, otherwise I could have tried for a position in the imperial kitchen." As soon as these words ended, a contemptuous snort rang out from behind. "You people can eat these cheap weeds?" Lady Yu's face went pale. She held Yu Zheng tight and at the same time restrained Yufeng, preventing him from standing up. The man continued, "Makes sense, I suppose. Who doesn't know that the new daughter-in-law of the Yu family is nothing but a maidservant from the Dong household? No matter how glorious the past may have been, didn't they still end up on this exile road?" Yufeng was young and hot-blooded. He instantly shook off his mother's hand and charged forward, "Shut your filthy mouth." The man looked thin and weak yet was still stronger than Yufeng by 3 parts. Yufeng was shoved and fell. He clenched his jaw, his fists tight, his eyes filled with indignant fury. The man grew more contemptible still. His brazen eyes swept over me, his voice dripping with malice. "Just a maidservant, but not bad-looking. Wouldn't it be better to follow me than stick with this bunch of widows and orphans with no future?" So saying he reached out, intending to take liberties with me. I gently held Yufeng back, looked the man over from head to toe, and smiled slowly, quite an arrogant mouth. "I wonder which noble young master you are, being sent into exile like this?" He turned red with fury. "When I was 8 years old, my parents died and no relatives would take me in. Just at that time the eldest young mistress of the Dong household fell ill, and a Taoist priest declared they needed to find a girl whose birth characters matched to shore up her health. So I was brought into the Dong household, nominally called a cousin miss, but in reality just a personal maidservant for Dong Siue. He said I was a servant. I didn't care. But clearly Lady Yu and her children had been pampered from birth and had never endured this kind of contempt. My deliberately drawn-out tone made him so furious his face turned purple. He was about to say something more, but seeing Chi Su approaching, he could only snort resentfully and leave. Chi Su came to tell us to pack our things and continue the journey. His tone was mild. After walking a few steps he hesitated for a long while, then finally spoke. Yun Su, miss, those steamed artemisia cakes this morning, would it be possible to make them again? I glanced and saw the guards who had eaten cakes that morning were pushing him toward me. I nearly laughed, but managed to keep a straight face, of course. Chi Su exhaled in relief, cupped his hands in a salute, his ears turning a faint pink. Yu Feng humphed in annoyance, his tone sour. This guard commander Chi Su treats us so well. It must be because eldest brother paid him off before leaving. I was slightly surprised. I knew. Good that you knew. Yu Feng was both angry and resentful that I didn't know how to protect myself. He continued irritably, don't be deceived just because someone speaks gently. Only then did I understand, and nearly laughed. I reached out and patted his head, gently reassuring him, I know, so don't worry about me. I'm not easily deceived. A few words and Yu Feng was coaxed back. I gently turned to Lady Yu, don't worry either, mother. I smiled softly, the smile reaching the corners of my lips, and at the same time slipped a hairpin from my sleeve in one clean, decisive motion. People who only know how to bully the weak, they sooner or later bring disaster upon themselves. After walking for a full day, the party had only covered 40 li by evening. Once camp was pitched, Chi Su directed several guards to go gather artemisia with me. That evening's meal was more varied. I cut the dried meat the guards provided into fine strips, mixed it into the steamed artemisia to create a dish both savory and rich with the fatty flavor of meat. After eating the wild vegetable dish, Chi Su even had someone bring additional water. I noticed that the blisters at the corners of Lady Yu's lips had turned less angry red as night fell. Most people had lain down to rest. I had just returned the pot to the guards and was walking into a dark corner when a sharp, hard stone was suddenly pressed to my throat. Hand over all the silver those soldiers over there gave you. The ferocious voice, I immediately recognized it as the man from earlier. His name was Wenda, a dissolute young master who had been caught forcing himself on a commoner woman, and who had coincidentally been caught up in the Yu family's case, making the emperor so furious he ordered Wenda exiled along with them. He therefore harbored a bone-deep hatred for the Yu family. I smoothed my expression and deliberately softened my voice. Mr. Wan, loosen your grip a little, then I can take the silver out more easily. Wenda snatched the coin pouch I had just produced, shook it, not very satisfied, but still stuffed it inside his robe. Quite the tough talk during the day. Let's see if you're so soft and yielding now. As he spoke he reached out, intending to stroke my face. I said coldly, cutting him off, know when to stop. If I scream right here, you won't come off any better. Wenda let out a contemptuous snort and turned to leave. At that moment I clenched my fist in the shadows and silently made my decision. This person could not be left to continue. The next morning when Yu Feng heard that Wenda had robbed me of silver, his eyes went red with rage. He rolled up his sleeve and was about to go find the man. I hurried to hold him back. Feng Ji, don't be rash. Isn't it just that he's taking advantage of our household having no man to stand up for us? I am the eldest here and I will take care of this myself. Besides, people like him, if you don't wipe them out in one go, they're like flies, not really dangerous, but endlessly troublesome. I narrowed my eyes and lowered my voice. Tomorrow, if he comes to demand silver again, quietly lead guard Commander Chi here to witness it. Yufeng suppressed his anger, took a deep breath, and finally nodded in agreement. Another day passed. I stood waiting at the agreed spot. Wenda looked left and right, then held out his hand demanding money. I bit my lip, putting on a show of reluctance. "Mr. Wan, you ought to leave us widows and orphans at least a little silver for self-protection." "Give it here." Wenda grabbed the few coins impatiently and pushed me. "Why less today? You're hiding money, aren't you?" I snatched my hand back and loudly protested, "I am not." He cursed at me a few times, then turned his back and left. "Remember, if there's less than today, tomorrow, I'll show you what I can do." When he had walked far enough away, I quietly glanced behind me where Chi Su was standing not far off, then silently raised my hand, wiped my eyes, and turned to leave. The next day came news that Wenda had been beaten severely by the guards. Yufeng was a little anxious. "The guards won't kill him, will they? But there are still several days before we reach Nan'an town. If he still isn't dead, what do we do?" I smiled softly. "It's fine, with me here." That evening, not long after dinner, I was washing bowls by the riverbank when a commotion suddenly erupted in the guards' camp. Chi Su came running over, his face cold, calling out, "Yun Su, miss." I concealed my amusement and pressed a hand to my stomach, putting on a show of weakness as I stepped forward. Among the guards, 4 men were doubled over, clutching their stomachs in pain. On closer inspection, they were all people who had paid to eat in recent days. I went pale. The cramping sensation in my stomach grew fiercer. "What is going on?" Chi Su stared hard at me, his eyes sharp as needles, his words slow and deliberate with the air of an interrogation. "Does Yun Su, miss, know anything about this?" I opened my eyes wide in shocked confusion. "What does this mean? Is the guard commander suspecting me of poisoning?" I struggled to endure, large drops of sweat rolling down my forehead. When cooking, all the guard commanders were present. The artemisia was also gathered personally by the guard commanders themselves. How could I have administered poison? Besides, I myself am suffering from severe stomach pain right now. I bit my lip, my eyes reddening. I had intended to look weak and vulnerable to win Chi Su's trust, but unexpectedly, in just one brief moment of facing him, he had already looked away. At that same instant a guard stepped forward with clasped hands to report, "Commander, the culprit has been found." Someone witnessed Wenda putting something into the pot. Chi Su withdrew his gaze, took out a handkerchief and handed it to me. "I have misjudged the miss. The miss may rest. When the physician arrives, he will also take your pulse." Wenda was pinned down by guards and searched. No medicinal powder was found on him, but his sleeve was conspicuously coated with a thin layer of white powder. He was held face down on the ground, struggling and screaming, "I didn't poison anyone. That wench there set me up." Chi Su stamped hard on his back so he could no longer move, only lie flat and gasp. "Take him away." I gave a slight curve of my lips and began counting the coins in my hand. "Money that isn't yours. Once you've taken it, you will have to vomit it back out." Before long Chi Su returned for another visit. He returned the silver that had been searched from Wenda's person and said calmly, "Wenda intended to harm the guards and was waiting for an opportunity to flee, so he will no longer be escorted into exile. My people have taken him to the county jail nearby for questioning. The worst outcome would be that after his sentence is carried out, he will be conscripted into hard labor, no opportunity to come back for revenge. Chi Su looked at me as if wanting to offer reassurance. Before leaving the capital, the second young master of the Yu household asked me to look after everyone. If anything happens, come find me. I gently lowered my eyes and concealed the brief flash of emotion in them. Yes, many thanks, Guard Commander Chi. When Chi Su had gone out of sight, Yu Feng came close and lowered his voice. Sister-in-law, where did the medicinal powder come from? I calmly tied the cord on the coin purse, the bronze tokens clinking softly together. There was no powder. The white powder on him was flour. Yu Feng was stunned, but those guards were clearly in pain. I explained unhurriedly, Artemisia cannot be eaten with safflower. If eaten together, it will cause severe stomach pain, but does not affect the health at all. Having said this, I divided the silver into 3 portions, one hidden inside my robe, the other 2 placed in Yu Feng's sleeve and travel bag. When I had finished, I continued calmly. This plan was somewhat crude, but because Chi Su already had a prejudice against Wenda from before, even rough as it was enough to succeed. Most importantly, the prior arrangements Yu Shao had made played their role. Without him, Chi Su would not have treated us so considerately, nor would he have intervened proactively in conflicts between prisoners. Thinking of this, I sighed. I wonder if when we reach Nan'an town it will be possible to send a letter to your eldest brother. At the mention of Yu Shao, Yu Feng immediately made a dejected sound. The transaction between me and Dong Siua, using my identity as a stand-in to exchange for money to treat my mother, the Yu family knew nothing of it. But the original bride had been replaced by a lowly cousin from a branch of the family. The Yu family had not only lost a prestigious marriage alliance but also paid a heavy price to save me. This debt of kindness I had to bear. So before Yu Shao returned, I would take care of his mother and younger siblings. Consider it repaying my debt. The road of exile, this stretch was almost over. As long as we reached Nan'an town, I believed I could carve a wide path forward on my own. Because in all 4 seasons there was hope. In spring gather young chives and fragrant shepherd's purse. In summer there was soured milk that melted instantly on the tongue. In autumn harvest waxy sweet potatoes with chrysanthemum wine. In winter roast chestnuts and yams warm beside the fire. Carrying these thoughts with her, Nan'an town appeared before them. When they arrived at the local government office in Nan'an town to complete the exile registration, Chi Su and the accompanying guards also prepared to turn back for the journey home. Over the second half of the road, I had taken over nearly all the cooking for them. During the days in the wild, I had made artemisia and shepherd's purse. Occasionally when passing through villages and towns, would also braise chicken with spring bamboo shoots, or make cushion carp and tofu soup, all dishes bursting with fresh spring flavor, delicious and satisfying. The guards were reluctant to leave, sighing and praising my cooking until Chi Su shouted at them to disperse. He gently raised his eyes to look at me, then parted ways by returning something. A heavy metallic clink in the palm of his hand, the gold bracelet shining brightly. It was the bracelet I had once exchanged for a hairpin to treat Lady Yu's illness. Chi Su's voice was low. The miss should take it back. I only reached out to accept it when I met his determined gaze. I smiled. If the guard commander ever has occasion to visit Nan'an in the future, I will treat you to a meal. Chi Su gave a slight, tight smile, and only at that moment did I realize he was actually still a very young junior officer. Yes. Take care of yourself. After being exiled, in reality the government office did not confine prisoners to a fixed location. As long as one had silver, one could still leave the government-designated accommodation district and rent one's own lodgings. The returned gold bracelet was just enough to rent a small house and cover half a year's rent. Once the luggage was unpacked and the house swept clean, I settled down to calculate. At this point Lady Yu knocked on the door and came in. Yun-su. I set down my charcoal pencil and looked up, smiling. Mother, please sit. Seeing her hesitate, I asked, is there something you want to tell me? Lady Yu thought for a moment, then handed me a silk pouch. Shower has married you. You are the Yu family's daughter-in-law. Now that his eldest brother is away, you should naturally be managing the household. I accepted the silk pouch and found it rather flat inside, probably not much silver left. Lady Yu looked slightly embarrassed, lowering her voice. There isn't much money left at home. Once we've settled in, I'll look for work sewing and mending. Feng'er is also old enough now, though he cannot take the imperial examinations, he should still have some schooling. I nodded without a moment's hesitation. Of course he must study. I've already inquired with the housing agent. Near here there is a private academy. Tomorrow I'll go find out about the tuition fees. Lady Yu was astonished. You are willing to pay for Feng'er's schooling? I smiled serenely. And for Yuzheng too. I'll look into whether there's a girls' school. If not, when she's old enough we can invite a female teacher to come to the house. So saying, I handed her the paper I had just been writing on. Mother, take a look. On the way here I made some inquiries. Yong Prefecture is remote and Nan'an is even further north. The local cuisine is mainly simple cooked dishes. Very few are prepared in the style of the capital. I plan to start with a morning food stall, save up enough capital, then rent a small shop and gradually expand the scale. The more I spoke, the more hopeful I felt about the future. But first, I looked at Lady Yu with bright eyes. Mother, after walking such a long road, we still haven't had a proper meal. Today let's go to the market and make a proper housewarming feast, shall we? When they left the capital it had been midwinter. Now that they had reached Nan'an, spring had returned. The market was alive with all kinds of fresh vegetables, meat, and fish. In my left hand I held a live duck. My right hand had already briskly selected young chives and celtus. Turning around I saw Yu Feng with both hands full, fish, chicken, tofu, frowning as though carrying the weight of the world, glaring at the struggling chicken. How do you kill a chicken? I laughed. Bring that one home and raise it for eggs to eat. I've already asked Master Sun the butcher to slaughter one for us. They'll send it over. Yu Feng breathed a sigh of relief and obediently carried everything home. Yuzheng ran off chasing the chicken. I left Yu Feng to light the fire and quickly washed and cut the ingredients with a clean, practiced hand. Since we were planning to stay here long term, this housewarming feast should also invite the neighbors to share the joy. I julienned pork belly and stir-fried it with dried tofu and shepherd's purse. Spring chives, fresh and green and tender, were best stir-fried with egg. Small silver fish no bigger than a pinky finger simmered with water shield. Clear white broth dotted with green, looking like white jade mixed with emerald jade, beautiful and appetizing. There was also bamboo shoots braised with pork, and tofu mixed with fragrant mushrooms, simple, seasonal dishes, and within just 1 hour the table was laid out full. Yuzheng sat before the table, drooling with longing. Sister-in-law is amazing. Lady Yu had already invited 3 neighboring ladies. Seeing 8 dishes of soup and rice, not at all sparse, on the contrary extremely clever and refined, The wife of the Lin household put down the basket of eggs she had brought and exclaimed in admiration, "Yesterday I was wondering who had moved into the new house. It turns out it's a kitchen god in disguise." The wife of the Song household was easygoing. She had brought over a jar of glutinous rice wine with no ceremony at all, already picking up a piece of chive and egg with her chopsticks and nodding appreciatively. So good." The wife of the Zhu household smiled quietly. "I came in such a hurry I didn't bring a gift. I'll have my husband bring over some of the wild jujubes we picked the other day to give to Lady Yu." Lady Yu smiled brightly like a flower and warmly invited everyone to eat. Midway through the meal I casually asked whether the three elder sisters knew of a trustworthy private school in Nan'an Town. Lady Lin answered at once, "Master Shen's school. My son is studying there too." Master Shen's wife is the granddaughter of the county magistrate. His school can be considered the best in this area. This was just what I had hoped for. I cheerfully inquired about the address and tuition fees, and planned to bring Yufeng to enroll in a few days. I also asked about the morning food business. The housewarming feast could be considered a perfect ending. When I finally set up my stall, I brought out a round griddle as wide as an arm's pan that I had ordered specially made at the ironsmith's. At this point Yufeng could no longer help but ask, "Sister-in-law, what are you planning to sell?" The people of Nan'an Town aren't too well off. For a morning snack stall, it wouldn't be convenient to use meat. Better to make chive and egg flatbreads. Without meat, I'll use eggs and combine them with fresh spring chives and spices, flattened and fried crispy in hot oil. They'll definitely be irresistibly fragrant. I quickly wrapped filling into small balls of dough, shaped them and pressed them flat, and placed them on the pre-oiled griddle. The sizzle of hot oil rang out and immediately a mouth-watering aroma spread everywhere. As the flatbreads gradually cooked, I used a spatula to flip them. A golden crispy color appeared, looking extremely appetizing. I signaled to Yufeng that he could start selling. Yufeng blinked, confused. Selling what? Yufeng really was oblivious. Even Yuzheng knew. Yuzheng in her childish high-pitched voice sang out cheerfully, "Yunji flatbreads, delicious and affordable." Yufeng flushed red but was still too shy to open his mouth. Even so, Yuzheng's adorable and charming appearance quickly attracted the attention of passers-by. I used a knife to cut a just-cooked flatbread in half, placed it on oiled paper to cool slightly, then gave half to Yuzheng. "Sit here and eat, little sister. Be careful, it's hot." The blade slid across the crispy shell with a satisfying crunch. The light, sharp fragrance of chives mingling with the rich, savory smell of egg burst out thick and strong, making people unable to stop themselves from swallowing. Yuzheng obediently took the flatbread and bit into a large piece, scalded until her cheeks puffed out, but still unwilling to spit it out. Her bright little eyes shone as she blew on it and exclaimed, super delicious." A woman passing by with a small child was attracted by the sight of Yuzheng eating with such delight. The child drooled and tugged at his mother's hand, pleading, "Mother, I want to eat that too." The woman couldn't resist her food-loving child and reluctantly fished out her coin purse and walked over. "You little glutton. How much are Yunji flatbreads?" I smiled while attending to the breads on the griddle. 6 copper coins each, 10 coins for 2. The woman was drawn in by the golden crispy exterior and took a careful look at the filling. Seeing it clean and tidy, she was satisfied and produced 10 coins, taking 2. "Fengji, take the money." 2 piping hot flatbreads wrapped in oiled paper, golden and beautiful, the fragrance rising, Both mother and child ate as they walked. The aroma drifted all down the little street. By now, passers-by and onlookers attracted by the smell were crowding around the stall. 1 for me. 2 for me. We have a big family, 4 for us. Euphone was busy collecting money but still remembered to look up and smile. Good? Come again next time. In less than 1 hour, an entire basin of filling was sold out. I stretched and patted my back to ease the aching stiffness. Euphone meanwhile held a travel bag stuffed full of copper coins, his mouth hanging open for a long while before he gasped, "We've already made back our investment?" Yes, indeed they had. When they got home, I washed the copper coins clean and counted them again and again, not only enough to recover the cost of the griddle and the eggs and spring chives, but also enough left over for the next 2 days' ingredients. Lady Yu helped me rinse the chives in preparation for the next day and said happily, "At this rate, more than 1 month is enough to earn half a year's rent." I murmured an agreement, did a quick mental calculation. Then suddenly remembered, first let Feng Jie help me for another half a month. Once half a month is up, send him to Master Shen's school. Everything is gradually getting better. Not until midnight, lying in bed, did I suddenly remember I had forgotten something, writing a letter to Yu Shao. Euphone and Lady Yu had finished writing a long time ago. As the nominal wife, writing not a single word seemed improper. Thinking this, I got up, picked up the brush, and wrote a few lines to tuck inside the letter. The next morning the number of people coming to Yunji to buy flatbreads grew by the day. Euphone was so busy collecting money he couldn't keep up. Yuzheng sat beside him with a flatbread, eating and serving as a living advertisement. Everyone who bought a flatbread couldn't help but compliment the adorable little girl. After half a month, the earnings from the flatbread stall had gradually allowed me to purchase quite a few things for the household. New spring clothes for both adults and children, brush, ink, paper, and inkstone for Euphone to go study, and Lady Yu even bought a pair of warm gloves to wrap together with a letter and send off. The replacement helper at the stall had been found. It was Song Nyang's younger sister. A year younger than me, very quick and capable. So this morning, after selling out the flatbreads, I bought a bolt of cloth, brought along an inkstone and some copper coins, and took Euphone to Master Shen's private school. At that time the children in the school had not yet been dismissed. Each child was nodding and reciting books. A young schoolboy inside went to inform the teacher. I took the opportunity to give Euphone final reminders. At school you must get along well with your classmates, smile at people, and show respect to the teacher. I know, sister-in-law. Euphone nodded obediently. Because I had spoken with the teacher in advance, before long the schoolboy led him inside. But I hadn't expected that not even a full day had passed when, while I was in the courtyard experimenting with a new dish, I looked up and saw Euphone had appeared at the gate, his entire body covered in mud and dust, as if he had just rolled through several rounds of dirt. I stared blankly. "Fengji, what happened?" The young man bit his lip, and could not stop his eyes from reddening. "Sister-in-law, I'm sorry. I got into a fight with a classmate." Lady Yu heard the commotion and came running out. Seeing this she was heartbroken, but still straightened her expression and reprimanded, "Sister-in-law has worked so hard to set things up for you. And what do? On only the second day you get into a fight with a classmate. Are you not ashamed? Quickly follow mother to apologize to the teacher." "Wait." I took Yufeng's hand and drew him to one side, washed his face, then turned back to reassure Lady Yu. "Mother, don't be angry. Feng Ji's temper, you know it yourself. There may be hidden circumstances here. Leave this to me to handle. Lady Yu gave an irritable huff and went back inside. I crouched down to look at Yu Feng. Now you can tell sister-in-law what happened. Yu Feng's eyes were red, his voice hoarse. There's a child in the school with the surname Li. He explained in a low voice for a while before I understood the full situation. In the school there was a child surnamed Li who knows how he had heard the news, knew the Yu family were condemned exiles and recognized Yu Feng immediately. He then led a group of children to bully Yu Feng. Yu Feng, having also been raised like a precious gem from childhood, was not about to submit, and so they had a fight. The result was that Master Shen caught them in the act. The Li boy's family had a lot of people and he was quick with his tongue. He reported first, letting Master Shen learn about the Yu family's exile. Already displeased that Yu Feng had caused trouble on only his second day, Master Shen also harbored the prejudice that a family condemned to exile must be morally corrupt, so without distinguishing right from wrong, he scolded Yu Feng and expelled him on the spot. Upon learning the whole story, I felt this would not be easy to resolve. Why the Yu family had been exiled, I didn't know clearly, but the current emperor had done foolish things more than once or twice, and from my impression of the Yu family over this entire time, the charges were probably false. I plucked a piece of wild jujube candy I had just made and pressed it into Yu Feng's hand. All right, let sister-in-law handle this first. Try it and see how today's candy turned out. The sweet flavor spread across his palate, and Yu Feng gave a slight curve of his lips. Delicious. Little Feng Ji was beaten at school. As the elder, I naturally had to go speak with the teacher. But when I arrived, the door was firmly shut and a young schoolboy coolly handed me back the gift package that had been submitted yesterday, saying Master Shen had declared the Yu family's descendants were beyond his ability to teach. A surge of anger rose inside me. I took the gift package and turned to leave, but just at that moment the children were dismissed from school and came streaming out. At the head was a chubby little boy who shouted loudly, "The Yu family is of bad stock. Tell your fathers and mothers not to associate with them." The anger rose again, but I quickly forced myself to calm down. Initially I had planned to find another school for Yu Feng, but looking at the situation, simply changing schools might not be enough to resolve things. If the root problem wasn't solved, the Yu family would find it hard to live in peace in Nan'an Town. There was no point arguing with a child, and Master Shen was dodging and refusing to meet. I thought it over for a long while, then decided to seek out Lady Lin. Lady Lin tilted her head in thought, then leaned close and whispered, "Master Shen is a conservative man. But I've heard he has one weakness." "What weakness?" "He's afraid of his wife." I was astonished, both surprised and amused. I quickly followed up, "Sister, do you know anything about Lady Shen?" Lady Lin carefully recalled, "I've only met her a few times, always during end-of-year visits when I took my son there. Lady Shen is from Huizhou. She looks rather thin and frail. Before I always thought her health wasn't good. But I've since heard that apparently it's because she can't get used to the food here." "What a coincidence, sister, since Mimi's skills are so good, do you know how to cook Huizhou cuisine?" I already had a plan forming in my mind. I smiled and said, "Many thanks, elder sister. When Mimi finishes making the pastries, I'll remember to have mother bring over a plate for you." When I got home I immediately took out lard, pork belly, salt-preserved vegetables with plum stems, and resting dough. As I rolled up my sleeves to begin kneading the dough, Lady Yu asked curiously, making something again? Do you need help? I smiled, eyes lighting up like a new crescent moon, making huejo pastries, crab shell golden cakes. The wheat flour mixed with lard was kneaded for a while and became soft and smooth, a warm white color. The lard, fatty and not too lean, was tossed into the pan and stirred briefly. In the blink of an eye a rich, savory aroma wafted out. Then I added the finely chopped salt-preserved plum stem vegetables and stirred a few more times. The sharp savory fragrance spread throughout the kitchen. Each ball of dough was carefully wrapped around filling, the edges pinched neatly to form small pastries no bigger than the palm of a hand. Yuzheng watched with wide round eyes. Wow! The pastries were arranged in the oven. Under the right temperature they quickly puffed up and turned golden yellow like cooked crab shells. The surface was slightly raised, just one bite and a salty, rich savory flavor spread through the mouth, rich but not greasy, the shell shattering crisp as old worn paper at the slightest touch. While the golden crab shell cakes were baking, I continued using honey jujubes and white sugar to make sweet huejo rice balls. That way both savory and sweet were accounted for, enough to knock at the door of Master Shen's household. At the gate of Master Shen's house, the young schoolboy saw me and immediately frowned, about to drive me away. I held out the box of pastries and said gently, "This time I have come to find Lady Shen. Please pass it on for me, young sir." A faint aroma drifting through the gap in the lid made the schoolboy involuntarily relax his brow, his expression softened by 3 parts. Before long he came back smiling happily. "Miss, watch your step, please come this way." Lady Shen was indeed just as Lady Lin had described, her figure slender as a willow swaying in the breeze, her features delicate but gaunt, so thin it seemed a light gust of wind might carry her away. She was holding a golden crab shell cake and biting into it piece by piece, the crumbs at the corners of her mouth not yet wiped away. When she saw me walk in, she reluctantly set the cake down and gently wiped her mouth before smiling warmly. "You must be Yun-Su. Come sit. You are also from Huizhou? These pastries are truly authentic." I sat down beside her and smiled. "I am from the capital. I just happen to know a little about cooking." Adjusting my manner, I said seriously, "The reason I have presumed to call today is that I have a matter I wish to ask Lady Shen's assistance with." I then recounted what had happened at the school, with a touch of awkwardness in my voice. "It doesn't matter that my younger brother can't study at Master Shen's school. But he has been moping for 2 days because the teacher does not trust his character. Being an elder sister, I only hope Master Shen can meet with him once, not to show favoritism, just to give him a fair chance to prove himself." Lady Shen, hearing this, furrowed her brows. "That old fogey of mine has been deceived by a bunch of children." She looked at me. "Yun-Su, don't worry. Tomorrow just bring your younger brother to our house and I will arrange this." I was overjoyed and bowed my head repeatedly in thanks. The next day I brought Yufeng to Master Shen's house again. Master Shen's attitude today was much more amiable than before, though still maintaining a stern face. With Lady Shen sitting at his side his tone had softened as he asked Yufeng about what had happened a few days ago. Before coming I had coached Yufeng carefully. Now he stood in his plain cloth robe, spine straight, not servile but not arrogant either, clasping his hands as he answered, respectfully, "Teacher, this student had just enrolled and wanted nothing more than peace. But Li Gui and the others insulted my late father. Though this student is still young, he knows what it means to honor or shame one's family. Our Yu family has guarded the frontier for generations. Even if our elders made mistakes, they should be judged by the law. We cannot allow common riffraff to use that as grounds for humiliation. Hearing this, Master Shen's brows smoothed. He asked, "Why did you not address me as teacher?" Yu Feng answered firmly, "Teacher's reputation is of the utmost importance. This student does not dare presume to climb above his station." Master Shen immediately stared. Am I the sort of petty person who takes revenge on innocence? All right, come with me. I want to assess your scholarly level. I took a calm sip of tea, not worried in the slightest. With Yu Feng's level of learning, this hurdle would certainly be passed. Master Shen led Yu Feng into the study, leaving me and Lady Shen to chat. In the course of conversation I came to understand more about the situation in Nan'an town and discovered something very interesting. Li Gui was insolent because he had an uncle who ran a private bank, and his father ran a pastry shop only one street away from my stall. No wonder, my stall had been open for barely more than half a month and had been eating into his business at every turn. A perceptive person could certainly see that. A while later Yu Feng came out from the study. Master Shen looked quite pleased, truly a clever child. Lady Shen glanced at him with an expression that was almost a smile. If not for me, wouldn't you have let this talent slip by? Master Shen immediately conceded, clasping his hands. Funan is wise, Funan is wise. Then, come to school tomorrow, don't be late. Yu Feng gave a slight nod, his voice measured. Yes, teacher. Yu Feng's matter was resolved. Master Shen also sternly reprimanded his students, forbidding them from spreading gossip about the Yu family. The flatbread stall continued to do steady business. The silver in my hands grew daily. I calculated further savings. In the future I could rent a small shop space so the business wouldn't be affected by rainy weather. One morning after clearing up the stall, Song Nan hesitated before coming close to me. Yun Su, elder sister, the past few days I've noticed someone secretly watching our stall. I didn't pay it much mind and only gave a cold smile. Look all you want, watching a recipe isn't the same as learning it. Brisk business always makes others envious. I understood this very well. But I hadn't expected that someone would be impatient enough to act so immediately. That evening I and Lady Yu and Yu Feng were kneading dough in the courtyard with Yu Jing playing nearby, when suddenly a stone flew in from outside and struck Yu Jing squarely on the forehead. The little girl burst into loud wailing. Lady Yu hurried over to comfort her, crying out in fury, "Who?" Yu Feng's face darkened. He immediately ran to open the door, but outside there was already no one to be found. I frowned and checked Yu Zheng's wound. Fortunately the stone had not been too large, only leaving some swelling, redness, and a small scrape. The next morning I went to the government office to report the case, but the officials were perfunctory and indifferent. This has no evidence. How do you expect to find anyone? Though I suspected someone wanted to steal the recipe for the spice blend, without evidence there was nothing to be done and I had to turn back. Zhu Nyang, hearing about it, was worried and reminded me, I've heard that thieves usually scout ahead before they strike. At night they throw stones into a yard to see if the household keeps a guard dog. If there's no dog, they'll find an opportunity to scale the wall and steal silver. You ladies and children are alone at night, be careful. If anything seems wrong, call out loud and my husband will come running. Hearing this, my heart tightened. I thanked Zhu Nyang, then went home and warned Lady Yu and Yu Feng to be extremely vigilant. In the days that followed nothing happened, and we gradually relaxed our guard. That night I woke up in the middle of the night to go outside. I had just touched the door of my room without yet pushing it open when the door was suddenly yanked open from the outside. A cold hand seized my arm and pulled me inside. The force was great but strangely not rough, just enough to restrain me yet not causing any pain. I immediately snapped fully awake, opened my eyes wide, and opened my mouth to scream. A hand quickly covered my mouth. A clean, cool fragrance like snow on pine and bamboo flooded into my nostrils. I bit down hard, deep enough to draw blood. The other person gave a small groan but still did not let go. It's working. I immediately drove my elbow backward, then kicked hard with my foot, but the other person simply shifted their posture lightly and easily evaded all my frantic blows. Then they pressed me against the door panel. A low voice sounded right beside my ear, carrying a sense of helplessness. Don't scream, it's me. A thin ray of light from the door crack fell onto the face of the person before me, refined features as white as jade, beautiful as an immortal. He opened his lips slightly and said calmly 3 words, I am Yu Shao. I relaxed all at once. Only then did I realize cold sweat had seeped across my entire forehead. Yu Shao also let go and stepped back 1 pace. I'm sorry. The situation was urgent this time when I came back. I cannot let anyone see me. He paused, then stepped forward again. Can you walk? Let me help you. I did not stand on ceremony and let him help me sit down. Mother and everyone are asleep. Will you leave at dawn? Yes, I'll leave before first light. One of his hands was still concealed behind his back. I suddenly remembered, it seemed I had bitten him hard enough to draw blood earlier. But that wasn't my fault either. Who told him to appear so suddenly and frighten people like that? Thinking so, I felt there was nothing to apologize for. But before leaving I still took a medicated powder from the cabinet and placed it on the table. I'll go wake Mother, bandage it yourself. I knocked on Lady Yu's door. She gripped the leg of a chair, looked around on alert. Thief? I gestured for silence and led her and the 2 children over to my room. The moment she stepped in, Lady Yu froze. Shower. Yu Zheng and Yu Feng rushed forward in delight, eldest brother. Yu Shao was still in his dark traveling clothes, but his eyes had softened somewhat. Time is limited, let me get to the point. I understood his intention to leave them private space and turned to go. But Lady Yu held my hand and turned to Yu Shao, saying firmly, Yun Su may not be Miss Dong, but she is the daughter-in-law I have chosen, and a person of the Yu family. Yu Shao smiled helplessly. Mother, do you really think I'm the kind of person who abandons friends in adversity? He looked toward me, eyes full of quiet laughter. Stay, what I want to say, Yun Su should also know. It was the first time Yu Shao had addressed me by my given name. His voice was clear and cool, yet somehow it passed over my heart like a light feather. This time I came back secretly. Generalin has helped conceal me. But time is limited, both going and coming takes half a day. I must leave by morning. He took out 3 gold ingots from inside his robe and placed them on the table. Mother, don't worry about me. In the military camp there are still former subordinates of father. In Nan'an I've also arranged people. If there's an emergency or you need help, go to Xiangbao Pavilion and look for Treasurer Chen. Yu Shao arranged everything properly, then warmly asked about Yu Feng's studies and Lady Yu's health. Finally his gaze fell on me. Is the morning food stall tiring? If it's exhausting, don't do it. I'll send money home regularly. I shook my head. I don't feel tired. Cooking makes me happy, that's genuine. Before, at the Dong household, because Dong Siua didn't study properly, I always had to hold my performance below hers. I endured no small amount of sarcasm and mockery. But when cooking, I can do things my own way, no one pressuring me, no one mocking me. When I watched diners scalded by the heat yet still unable to stop praising the food, I found it extremely satisfying. Yu Xiao heard this and nodded. Good then. He suddenly seemed to remember something. Right, just now, my people caught someone lurking outside. I and Lady Yu exchanged glances. In the end I spoke and recounted what had happened in recent days. After hearing it, Yu Zhao's expression cooled several degrees. He bent down to carefully examine the healed wound on Yu Feng's forehead, then straightened up, clasped his hands behind his back, his voice icy as bone. Those who dared extend their claws here early must prepare themselves to have them severed. I handed the matter of the thieves over to Yu Xiao to handle. I could set my mind at ease. It was also nearly dawn. I left the space to the whole family and went into the kitchen. There weren't many ingredients in the house, but I couldn't let Yu Xiao leave on an empty stomach. Thinking for a moment, I took the dough left to rise from the previous night and shaped it into several flour roll buns to steam. I quickly made a dish of stir-fried eggs with wood ear mushroom, and an additional dish of cold spicy cucumber. The flour roll buns were kneaded together with spices, green onion, and pickled plum stem vegetables. When steamed, the rising hot steam activated a rich and enticing fragrance. The eggs mingled with the distinctive wood ear mushroom aroma created a smooth yet fresh and special flavor. Not to mention the crisp, cool cucumber mixed with vinegar garlic dressing, tart and refreshing as an appetizer. A perfect pairing. They had barely sat down when Yu Zheng, already used to praising me, opened her mouth and declared, "Sister-in-law is the best cook in the whole world. Mimi loves sister-in-law the most." I couldn't help but laugh. Let me see if Yu Zheng has been sneaking honey from the kitchen. I teased her, not noticing that Yu Xiao was picking up his chopsticks but had yet to touch the food. Yu Feng quietly reminded me, "Oh, I forgot to tell sister-in-law, eldest brother doesn't eat wood ear mushroom." "But eldest brother," he gently cut in, "you should eat a little too. Don't waste sister-in-law's cooking." I jolted to attention. My carelessness. The wood ear has a strong smell. Some people can't get used to it. Should I make something else for you? Yu Xiao breathed out calmly. It's fine. He used his chopsticks to pick up a piece of egg, skillfully shaking off the wood ear mushroom on it, and put it in his mouth. Just 1 second later, his expression visibly relaxed. Yu Xiao hesitated briefly, said nothing more, only his chopstick movements became increasingly rapid. In the end, the entire dish of stir-fried wood ear eggs was eaten almost entirely by him. After breakfast, Yu Xiao left while the sky was still gray-lit. As I was slicing chives to prepare for the day's sales, I half-jokingly asked, "Is it that Feng misremembered?" I saw eldest brother eat quite heartily. Yu Feng scratched his head and began to doubt his own memory. Lady Yu only smiled and said nothing. Day after day they sold flatbreads. Spring had passed in the blink of an eye. When the closing time for Yunji's flatbreads grew later and later, I finally made a decision. The weather is warm now. We can't keep selling chive and egg flatbreads. I counted on my fingers. At the start of summer the chives are both expensive and tough. and with so much oil in the mornings. It's easy to feel too full. Customers will gradually decrease. Lady, you looked a little worried. Then what do we do? It's fine, mother. Let me try a new dish. The next morning I had the ingredients ready. 6-minute cooked noodles rinsed through cold water, shredded chicken, julienne cucumber, garlic water, coriander, and various seasonings. The Yunji flatbreads sign was changed to Yunji morning food. After 2 months, Song Nan had become familiar with the process of making chive and egg flatbreads. She continued making those at one side, while I moved to the adjacent counter to work on the new cold chicken noodles. Trying Yunji morning food's new dish? I smiled in greeting to a regular customer. This regular was the owner of a bookstore. On hearing this, he sat down cheerfully. Give me a bowl. A pair of chopsticks cleverly lifted noodles from the cold water basin, arranged them in the bottom of the bowl, then placed a layer of snow-white shredded chicken and bright green cucumber on top. Prepared hot oil poured over with a sizzle, sending up a scent that stimulated the senses, just waiting for the diner to pick up their chopsticks. The bookstore owner gleefully scooped up a large mouthful of noodles, slurping them down noisily, then loudly praised, "So refreshing." In the end, he even cradled the bowl and ate it clean. After wiping his mouth, he immediately composed an impromptu verse: shredded chicken white as snow, cucumber green as cloud, together they glide down the throat and cool away this summer heat. Customers around him also nodded and praised. By the time the last person came running up, the last bowl of noodles had already sold out. He slapped his thigh in regret. It's all because that old Wang fellow over there ate 2 bowls at once. Old Wang hummed a tune smugly and curled his lip. Getting to eat Yunji's morning food and you're still late. You deserve it. Unexpectedly, the cold chicken noodles were received so warmly. I had prepared far too few. Half crying and half laughing, I hastily reassured the customers. Tomorrow there will still be more. I knocked on the basin to call out to customers. From today, every 15 days Yunji morning food will launch a new dish. What's more, in just 1 more month, Yunji morning food will be moving to the shop across the street. Don't go to the wrong place. The little food stall was finally about to be upgraded into a proper shop. After saving for more than another half month, I finally signed the lease agreement with the landlord of the property I had been eyeing for a long time, paying a full year's rent up front. The shop wasn't large, but it was spacious and clean. After a few days of cleanup, I went to the learned teacher to choose an auspicious opening day. Lady Lin, Song Nyang, and Zhu Nyang all came with gifts. Even Lady Shen came in person. I kept the elder sisters and personally prepared a table of dishes to welcome the guests at noon. Midway through the feast, Lady Shen suddenly spoke. Yun Su Mimi, though we haven't known each other long, I truly cherish you very much. I gently raised my cup of plum blossom wine to clink with hers. Mimi also very much likes Tabi Jie's straightforward character. She drank down 1 cup of wine and then suddenly became serious. I regard you as a true younger sister, so let me speak plainly. I know Yuzheng Mimi and Feng Ji call you sister-in-law, but in the 3 months since you've arrived in Nan'an town, I've never seen your husband. So I understand now. I shouldn't really be bringing up something that grieves you, but the days ahead are long. My husband has a junior disciple with excellent scholarship and of comparable age. She continued sincerely, if you're willing, in the future the 2 of you could take care of the whole Yu household together. It would also help share some of your burden. I heard this and was briefly stunned. Did she think I was a widow who had lost her husband? I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. I set down my wine cup. Elder sister, you've misunderstood. Song Nyang also leaned forward excitedly to join in. Speaking of this, I also want to claim a spot. The Sioux gentleman who recently moved in next door to you. He came especially to me to inquire about you. Song Nyang raised her eyebrows with a look of great satisfaction. The Sioux gentleman is from a well-off family and is an only child. He'll inherit the whole family fortune. Lady Shen won't give in. Her junior disciple is about to be appointed as principal clerk of Nanan Town, with a bright future ahead. Master Su's courteous nature is quite exceptional, and his junior disciple is mild-mannered and has never argued with anyone. After marriage it will certainly be harmonious. Sioux gentleman is handsome and personable. Junior disciple is tall and slender. I stared with round eyes at the two of them arguing until they were both flushed red, feeling both amused and helpless. I gave a light cough, but they still hadn't stopped. I had no choice but to smile and gently cut them off. Elder sisters, thank you both for your concern. But, I put on a slightly troubled expression and slowly said, my husband is still very much alive. Lady Shen and Song Nyang looked at each other for a long while, then laughed in embarrassed self-deprecation. Look at us. We asked too few questions and rushed to play matchmaker. Thank goodness we haven't said anything to the junior disciple yet, otherwise it would have affected your reputation. I also laughed along. My husband is serving as a 100 household commander at the military camp in Chongling. The discipline in the military is very strict. Since I moved here, he hasn't yet had time to come home. Though I didn't understand exactly what Yu Shao was doing in the military camp, from the last time he came home, his bearing was clearly nothing like that of a common exile prisoner. I also couldn't very well ask too many questions, and could only set the subject aside. Once he's back I'll definitely personally bring him to meet all the elder sisters. That meal was deemed a cheerful success for both hosts and guests. I thought this misunderstanding had ended here, but unexpectedly there were still lingering consequences. A few days later I discovered my restaurant had gained a new regular customer, visiting every day. It was none other than Su Jun that Song Nyang had mentioned. I received him politely. Today there's a new dish, glutinous rice and lotus leaf chicken. Would the young gentleman like to try some? Su Jun's peach blossom eyes curved slightly, his smile gentle and carrying a certain charm. However much you have, I'll buy it all. I furrowed my brows. In recent days he had been buying more and more. Today he even wanted to buy out everything. I was beginning to feel annoyed, but before I could refuse, the customers lined up behind him were already voicing their protest. By what right? You want to buy out the entire stall? What do the rest of us eat? Su Jun replied loudly, Yun Su, miss, works so hard at her business. I'm buying everything out. What's wrong with that? This was becoming a headache. I was just about to tell Song Nan to get rid of him when outside the door a familiar voice rang out. The sound fell on everyone's ears, cold and clear yet ringing like a mountain brook. If you keep dawdling here, you only make my wife more tired. I raised my head in astonishment. Yu Shao had returned. More importantly, he had proactively appeared in public view. Yu Shao placed particular emphasis on the two words, my wife. Before I could react, I saw Su Jun freeze on the spot, his eyes filled with a wounded expression. So Mimi wasn't deceiving me. So many gazes around me converged on us. I no longer had any mood to do business. I set my things down and asked directly, I and Master Su have had no private dealings. Why does the young gentleman think I was deceiving him? Su Jun seemed to be genuinely pained, his brow furrowed tight. Song Nyang told me that Mimi's husband was already gone. I assumed she was merely testing me. Yu Xiao stepped forward. The crowd automatically parted to either side. Today he was not in military attire but wore a blue-green brocade robe, its cuffs embroidered with silver patterns that shimmered in the light, making him look even more elegantly exquisite. He walked over and stood beside me, circling his arm around my waist and using a slight pressure to draw me to lean against his chest. Then he looked up lazily at Su Jun, the corner of his mouth curving into a languid smile, his entire bearing radiating the nonchalant arrogance of a noble young master escaped from the capital. He laughed softly, his tone offhand. My apologies, Master Su, you've come too late. As for the lotus leaf chicken and glutinous rice, they're gone. Everything else too. Yu Zhao's air was overwhelming. Su Jun could only hold out for a brief moment before he quietly took his leave. The other customers crowded back around the counter and continued lining up to buy their morning food. Yu Xiao didn't leave but stood beside me helping collect money. 3 portions of lotus leaf glutinous rice chicken, a 1 copper discount, 13 copper coins change. 7 portions, 1 copper off, here's your change. Yu Xiao calculated at lightning speed without needing to think, just one glance and he had the exact figure. After receiving their food, customers were still reluctant to leave and took the opportunity to tease. Yun Su miss, why didn't you bring your husband out earlier? A handsome face like this sat at the front of the shop to attract customers. Isn't it such a waste? Yu Xiao didn't get angry at all. But I was teased until my ears were burning red. Finally the morning food was all sold and everything was cleaned up. I locked the door and led Yu Xiao home. On the way I told him everything that had happened while he was away, one thing at a time. Yu Xiao suddenly interrupted. You talk about Feng Ji's affairs, about finding a female teacher for little Zheng, about mother being thin from the heat, but why not say anything about yourself? I paused, then smiled. Me? I'm fine. Yu Xiao stared at me for a long moment, then sighed involuntarily. That fellow kept pestering you and wouldn't give up. Why didn't you ask someone to let me know? I would have handled it. It isn't a big deal. He spoke further. I was afraid you'd be reluctant to come to me. Before pushing the door open, he looked at me seriously. The circumstances of our marriage at the start were indeed somewhat haphazard. At the time everything was in chaos and even the marriage ceremony had not been performed. But you and I have signed the marriage contract and registered in the government household registry. We are husband and wife in every legal sense. If anything happens, feel free to tell me. A warmth rose in my heart. I shook my head gently. The folk here in Nan'an are simple. There's nothing that needs troubling you. Then I suddenly thought of something, studied him for a long while, and finally spoke carefully. But there is actually one thing I need your help with. My parents died early. When I was brought to the capital, there was an aunt who took care of me for a long time, so I called her Anyang. Before I married you, she fell seriously ill. The Dong household said they would look after her properly, but since I arrived in Nan'an, now nearly half a year has passed and I still haven't received any news from her. I've been very worried. If you have a way, could you help me find out how she's doing? Yu Shao did not furrow his brow and did not hesitate. He immediately nodded in agreement. I felt relieved and smiled. Good thing you came back in time. Today Feng Ji has a holiday. I'm sure they're all at home. I had just thought of a new dish. Let's go in and try it out. As I spoke, I unconsciously took his hand and pushed open the door. Yu Shao lowered his eyes to glance at the two intertwined hands, the corner of his lips curving slightly, and then he silently followed me into the courtyard. I took the frozen milk from the ice cellar made the day before and placed it on a plate, ladled over a layer of self-made apricot jam. Then carefully carried it outside. Yu Shao was chatting with Lady Yu about the current situation. Roughly speaking, the Chongling army had broken camp and was now stationed at Xia Mountain, only 1 hour's ride from Nan'an. Perhaps these days he would be able to come home more frequently. Lady Yu was overjoyed and kept patting his arm in continuous praise. Yu Feng had been about to take out his homework for Yu Shao to check, but the moment he saw me carrying the frozen milk over, he immediately put his books down and sat up straight obediently. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to Love Stories with Lisa for more stories. Thank you so much.